Hi guys, my name is Ivo and I'm from Asp.net. In this video I'm going to teach you how to create a custom test runner by using C# reflection. Before we begin, I would like to mention that if you're interested in advanced C# lessons, make sure you subscribe to this channel if you haven't done it already and turn on the bell notifications so that you won't miss a video. I'm uploading lessons every week. Now let's begin. As a small disclaimer, I would like to mention that there are a lot of very well written and well supported test runners out there. For example, MS Test, for example, XUnit, NUnit, and many more. So actually, you don't need to write your own custom version of that tool, but it will be a good practice for you to learn reflection uh, and validate your knowledge, so to speak. So we're going to create a test runner just for the sake of it, so that you as a viewer, if you're not quite familiar with reflection, or um, if you're feeling a little bit of fear when you hear the word reflection, this video will be for you. That's the whole idea, to practice it. First, let me show you the idea of the test runner, and before we begin, I would like to also tell you another disclaimer that I haven't written this code before, so I'm going to code it live. We may run across some bugs, we're going to fix them. Also, we may need to refactor a little bit of our code, but it will be a work in progress, so to speak. Okay, the whole idea is that I would like to create a behavioral driven test runner, which will allow me to uh, create something like this. For example, if we have a car, a car object with public string model with some public uh, void is public bool is running, something like this, and private bool is running. Let's make that property, and let's have a public void start method, which will say that this running equals true. Then I will have public void stop method. This is running equals false. The idea behind the test runner is to have a class which will provide the test itself, and it will be very expressive in terms of language. It's actually pretty cool. I've saw that in one of the test runners that are currently popular, machine specifications, and I decided to create a small version of it as a tutorial here. So if I have car running test, something like that, what I would like to do is to have a test property here, really, or subject, like this. I would say car. Then I will name that class when car starts, and I'm going to have something like this: given context equals Given context goes to a lambda expression, this car equals car, because of this dot car, Visual Studio is going nuts because this classes does not exist. Because of this car start, it should be running. This dot car is running. I'm going to install shouldly, which is an assertion framework. Shouldly, this right here. This dot car is running should be true. So I would be able to create such tests, and each class will describe a separate test. Given some context, because of some method, it should have some assertions. Then the same thing can be done by specifying subject class when car, that should be car, not can. I would like to say that given a car, when stop is called, the car should stop running. And we will support multiple assertions. For example, I'm going to say private set here, and I'm going to say public void produce string model, and the model should become the provided model. So given a car with this and this dot car dot produce, for example, BMW. And I will have to have here this car model should be BMW. Something like that. Like this. This should be valid tests in my test runner. So what I need to do, I need to provide a subject attribute. I will need to provide uh, this given, this because, and this should. So let's create other projects. The first one will be class library.net standard, and it will be my test runner.framework. Here I will have all the classes responsible for the framework, the given, the subject, and so on. Then I will have my test runner dot tests, another class library, which will contain the tests itself. Okay, so the first thing I will need to do is I will need to move the car to the tests. Then I will need to move the when car to the test because these are my actual tests. Then I will need to move shouldly. Shouldly should be installed in the tests only. And I'm going to uninstall it from the test runner because I will not need it there. Good. When car and car are not needed anymore. Then in the framework, I'm going to add a subject attribute, which should be placed on cars, on classes, sorry. Attribute. Attribute usage, attribute targets, class, like this, and it will need to have public string name for the subject and public subject attribute string name, this dot name name. The idea behind this attribute is to find tests. All classes which are decorated with this attribute are essentially tests in my solution. And here I can separate test categories. Test for car, for cat, for student, for whatever other class I'm using in my system, and so on. Good, I'm going to reference the framework because I'm going to use it. And now this started working. Then what I would need to do is I would need to provide given because these three, which essentially are void delegates. Look at that. This is a void method right here. So if I save this as void delegates, it should be fine. So I'm going to add new class. How to name that? Test parts, test components, something like this. Public class test components, and I'm going to say public delegate void given. This one should be without any parameters, so if I go back to when car, test components dot given. Yeah, delegates should not be in a class. There should be like that. This is why we don't need that. Then I would need to do the same thing for it and the same thing for because. And suddenly, yeah, okay, I cannot use that. So I will need to make the car static. Go, it should be running and it should have correct model. And this should be my tests. Of course, ReSharper is telling me that these are actually fields, so we need to make sure that name them with proper naming conventions. Okay, great. So that's a very explicit way to describe our tests, but it's cool enough. It looks very readable and very well documented because when I open this class, I would be able to see what happens with the car. Given this context and because of the start method, the car should be running and should have correct model. Looks very nice in my opinion. Of course, we need to break some of the ground rules of the C# language. For example, we don't need to specify private here because it gets uglier, or public. Also, we cannot use var. We need to capitalize the messages in a minute and so on, but it's actually very cool. Before you start thinking me of a crazy person writing such tests, let me show you the tool I got inspiration from for this video. Like I said, it's called Machine Specifications and essentially allows you to do something similar. You specify a subject. In each test is a separate class. You specify static data, which is part of the test, and then you use establish because it and use delegates to write that test. It looks very expressive and very readable, and frankly speaking, I really like that approach. Let me just refactor, remove the privates here. Let's make them exactly like the example. And let's specify const string model equals BMW, like this, and let's reuse it to make sure that our tests are as high quality as possible. Okay, great. Then what we need to do is to start writing our actual runner because tests are ready. First things first, we need to reference the tests. Then what we need to do is to load load all the dependencies of the current assembly and find the tests. So first we need to load the assembly. So let's create it like this. Because by default assemblies are loaded into the current application domain only when we need them. We won't be able to find them by writing something like assembly equals assembly dot get current assembly get referenced assemblies. This way we won't be able to find the assembly because only system runtime is called. But if we load something from the assembly, we will be able to get my test runner.tests. So what we are going to do is we are going to extract the tests from an assembly by using a type from that assembly. Var test assembly equals type of car dot assembly. Then we need to find all the classes which are defined with the subject attribute. So var tests are from the test assembly dot exported types, all public types, dot, we write them public, right? Yep. Dot where type is defined by subject attribute dot to list. Let's see whether that's correct. Yep, when car is started, when car is stopped. Great. So first we find our tests. Let's extract that private. Let's make it more beautiful. I'm going to create a new class, test runner. Public void execute tests. I will make that static because we don't need more than one runner. And the main method will just have test runner.execute tests like this. So let's remove the unneeded usings here, and the first thing I would need is a private static that's in system reflection. Private static find tests. Static list of type. The idea here is that I would like to specify in the test runner from where to find the assemblies. So I'm going to say execute tests from the type of car assembly. Then I would like to get all assemblies, which is types.select. For each type, I would like to get the assembly, and test assemblies dot select many. Select all the exported types from all the assemblies and find tests from assemblies. Yeah, that's a number, so I need to cast it to array, and I'm going to write it like this. Good. I found two of them, so everything is working still. Then what I need to do is for each test, I will need to, for each test, I will need to get the given delegate. So I will need to find all the non-static fields. For each test in tests, I will need to find test components. Get fields, and I will need to provide that I need binding flags instance and binding flags non-public, because I need to find all the private fields here. This is essentially a field, it's not a property, and it's private when I don't specify its access modifier. So let's run that and see whether it's working. Yep, I found all the fields here. Let me see what ReSharper suggests. Okay, that's kind of okay. Var test components equals this. And for each test component int test components, we should execute something. First, I would need to extract the given. I won't need. No, I don't like that. Sorry about it. But for each test, I will need to extract the components. Then, from the components, I would need to extract the given. Test components where field type equals of given. First or default. If there is no given, actually let's make it that let's support more than one givens. Let's support multiple givens. Given the, for example, I may want to specify something like that. Two givens. I would need to have more, not need, but I will support two givens. Yeah, that's okay. Actually, I can support two because I may want to execute more than one method. It's not strictly advised. It's not advised to have a test which asserts more than one method, but let's support it out of the box. So let's find all givens. Where dot to list. If there is no given components, throw some invalid operation exception specifying that test does not contain given context. Then we need to get the other components which are essentially the same. So I'm going to extract private static list of field info get test components by a given type. Good. Var given components equals to get test components by the test components type of given. Given components because components and it components. Then for each test, I will need to run first the given context, then I will need to run the off context, and then I will need to run the it. So let's see how that goes. Because it. Private static void run test components. And I'm going to give a enumerable of field info test components. Test components, and I would need the test itself. Yep, object test. So test instance should be activator dot create instance of the test, because we need to create the instance of the class. We need to create an instance of the class and we need to get the value from it. So let's get the test instance, and then I'm going to run test components, given components on the test instance like this. Private static run test components. Good. Now we need to get the value for each component. This equals to test components dot select for each test component, which is a field info. I would like to get the value from the test. So this will return this value here. the delegate I want to run. Let's see whether everything works. So I have some method. So apparently the delegate works. The delegate is here. So I'm going to select that, and then I would need to cast it as a delegate. I'm going to try that. Not sure whether it will work. It works, okay. And then I'm going to say that I would like for each delegate value, I would like to invoke it, but why don't make it faster, because dynamic invoke is slower than normal delegate invoke. So I'm going to write something like this. I'm going to make the method generic, then I'm going to use that here, and then I'm going to set if I use given here, I will have invoke. But I won't be able to reuse the logic. So here I'm separated between performance and between cleaner code. I'm preferring performance here because in a situation with thousands of tests, performance will be crucial and we want them to run as fast as possible. So let's make run given components. Let's make it like this. Value.invoke. If we run that, it's run given components. Everything is running smoothly. Okay, and I will need to do the same thing for because components. Like this, and I would need to do the same thing for the it components, but I'm thinking how I can extract these a little bit. Private static void. Yeah, I'm going to do it like that. Private static void get components, take component, It's a bit better. Same thing for because. We need to validate that these do not throw exceptions, but that should be done in a minute. And run it components like that. Everything runs fine. Let's try with false, and we have an exception. Car is running should be false, but it was true. Great. Our test runner is working correctly, but let's add some stats. So let's create running tests. Then I would need to count the tests to give some sort of a report. Failed tests, success tests, and so on. But before I do that, let me show you where you can find this source code. If you go to my GitHub profile, which is Ivai Lukianov, hit repositories, then write down TV here, and that's the repository in which I'm uploading all the demo codes from my YouTube lessons. So you can download the repository or clone it, and you can play with the source code as you see fit. In this repository, I'm uploading all the source code, and I'm also listing all my videos, so you can take a look at everything that's available. I will be extremely thankful if you decide to start the project. And you may also watch it if you like, because usually I upload the source code and the video link here before I make it public on YouTube, so you may find some video before it is available. I'm going to use the moment to thank my sponsors. That's Bellatric, ReSharper, Softuni, Smart IT, Noble Hire, and 1Bit Software. Thank you guys. You truly rock. You motivate me to continue providing free education on my YouTube channel. You truly are great. Cool. So where I wrote that we're running tests, then we need to find the test subject. So I'm going to say test subject get custom attribute subject attribute. Also, I'm going to say that allow multiple is false because I don't want people to. Okay, that's the default value. I don't want people to allow me to put more than one subject here. Get custom attribute dot name. Test subject is that. Then I would like to specify running tests for. Then for each test, I'm going to show a message and a name. The name should be composed of the class name. When card is started, it should be running. Something like that. Okay, so I'm going to, for each it component, I'm going to add string test prefix, and for each value, oh, this won't work here. I will need to make it something like name equals test component dot name. Then and value should be casted to like this. Okay, so I created the name and the value. Now I need to say that I want to print the name. Console write wine, running, test prefix, it, let me test it. Running test for car, running when car is started, it should be running. The only problem is that the S is small. Let me find the quick capitalize method. Cool, let's copy that. That's new class, string extensions. Running when car is started, it should be running. Great. Now let's catch the exception. So I'm going to specify that try catch any sort of exception. We should write if we want to improve the message, we may write the console to be red here, but let let's keep that for now. Uh, exception. I would like to print the exception message. Like this. Failed. Looks okay. I'm seeing the exception message here. Of course, it can be formatted better, but this is more than enough. Car is running should be false, but was true. Good. I'd like to after each test, I would like to run good running test for car. This one is failed, this is passing. If everything passes, it should show correctly. But I would like to do something else. Find test dot group by test subject like this. The test subject here is actually tests dot key, like that. It will allow me to split the tests better, running tests for car. Okay, then let's skip that and put it, see how it goes. Running tests. It has an extra line here and I would like to remove it. This line here. Okay, looks even better like this. If we have a failing test, let's write it like this so that the exception could be seen easier. And we're pretty much almost done. We need to what will happen to see what will happen if this throws. It's not very friendly. So let's put a global try catch on all our components and let's just add exception. So if there is an exception message, it should show correctly. if something else besides it throws, we'll say that it's an unhandled exception, because actually it is. Like this. Specified cast is not valid. But let's show the whole stack trace, because we need to provide that, we need to say that a test is failing. Like this, so that the developer will know that there's a problem in the test itself and not the logic we're trying to test. And what we need to do finally is just to give some sort of a report. Private static int total tests, private static int passing tests, private static int failed tests, private static int test errors. Test errors should show our unhandled tests. So for each test, I'm going to say test total test plus plus. Then if we have an exception, test errors plus plus. If everything is working, passing test plus plus. And if we have a failed test, failed tests plus plus. Okay, what we need to do now is let's return the code here. Let's run it and let's do a report. Console write wine, console write wine new string. Usually you would like to extract the test reporter, so let's do that too. I'm going to add a class iTestReporter here, because the console we're using in the test runner is creating quite a huge coupling, so let's keep that. iTestRunner public interface void report string message, and test runner let's do it like that. Public static tests. This should be reporter. Public static iTest reporter get set equals to new console reporter. So we are going to provide a default implementation, which is using the console. But if somebody wants to write the test report on a file, for example, it will be very easily replaced. iTest reporter, report, and report line. Like this. And the test runner will use the console reporter by default, but it will have a public setter which allows everyone to test runner report line, allows everyone to replace that if needed. Test reporter here, here message should be no. Okay. Like that, and that should be working correctly. Great. Good, and last but not least, let's make a final report. Report line, total tests, passing tests, failed tests. And if test errors are more than 0, then tests with errors. Let's print that too. Okay, so we have total tests 2. Oh, that's not correct. Total tests should be for each it. So we have 3 total tests, passing tests 2, and 1 failing test. And if I fix my code, I would have everything passing. Great. So guys, we created a simple version. We created a simple version of machine specifications, which is quite nice. And in my opinion, these kind of tests are very cool. They have great readability, and it's written in a very expressive and language friendly way. So guys, I hope you liked this video. I hope you liked this test runner. Hopefully you learned something new. We did quite a lot of reflection here. We designed our test runner. Uh, it got a little bit longer. It's a little bit long, yeah, but I believe it's fine. If it starts getting longer, we may extract some of the methods to separate classes over here, but nevertheless, everything is fine. And speaking about tests, before I finish the video, I would like to show you my testing tools. In my free time, I create test tools for Asp.Net. So if you use that technology, you may take a look at this. These are essentially strongly typed fluent libraries for writing very easy and very readable, very well documented tests and assertions against the popular Microsoft Web Framework. So if you happen to be an ASP.NET developer, make sure you check them out. You may like them. A lot of people already use them. They have more than 2 million downloads on GitHub, so make sure you check them out because you may like them a lot. Additionally, because these tools are created in my free time, I will be very happy if you consider becoming a backer or sponsor on Patreon or Open Collective. I also accept one-time donations via PayPal. So if you like my tools or if you like this channel in general, I will be extremely thankful if you decide to support me. Okay guys, that was it for this video and bye.